Before the commission, please fill out a card and we will have you come before the board when we hit that item. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's March 22nd, and it's time for the next edition of the Board of County Commissioners meetings, and I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Kerner.
Here.
Commissioner Marino.
Here.
Commissioner McKinley.
Here.
Commissioner Sacks. Mayor Weinroth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Wise, would you please do the invocation and lead us in the pledge? Everybody, please rise.
Before we begin our business at hand, let us ask the divine for guidance as we make decisions to help improve our communities. Amen.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, short and sweet. Madam Administrator, how are you today? Do you have any additions, deletions, substitutions, or words of wisdom?
I'm fantastic today, and I hope all my bosses are as well. Mayor, on page 17, 3L2, we're moving to regular. It will now be 5J1. On page 40, 5F1, we have a revised summary giving a little more detail on who we contacted with the fees, proposed fees. Page 41, 5I1, which is the settlement agreement on the opioid, along with the interlocal agreements making Palm Beach County a qualified county.
Very good. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as it has been?
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, second by Commissioner
Motion by Marino,
Marino,
second by
yes.
Weiss.
It's been so long since I've seen you, Commissioner Marino. Okay. All in favor, all opposed? That's approved unanimously, 7-0. Thank you.
I didn't know.
All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Commissioner Marino's going to start wearing a name tag so I don't forget her name over there. Is there any item that anybody wishes to pull except for the item that has been moved to the regular agenda, 3L2? Seeing no, do we have any comment cards? Commissioner Bernard, I'm sorry, I didn't see your light.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item 3Z1 on page 19.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. So I'm going to accept a motion to approve the consent agenda without 3C1 or 3L2.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed, show that as being approved, 7-0. All right, we're now going to take up item 3C1. Commissioner Bernard.
3Z1, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Zebra.
And so you'll make that note.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, on item 3Z1, I just wanted to, if we can get staff to just give a quick overview or presentation of the savings that we're getting from this item.
Who's going to take the lead on this? Okay.
Sorry, I'm just getting my paperwork together here. Give me 1 second, if it's okay with you.
Surprise. as you're getting your paperwork, just for those who are watching, the board had made the decision in one of our earlier meetings to make a change with respect to our carrier, and I think Commissioner Bernard is looking to see the benefits that we have seen as a result of that change in carriers. With that being said, staff?
Okay. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Scott Marting, the Director of Risk Management for Palm Beach County. In addition to Assistant County Administrator to my left, Reggie Duran, I guess you're right, my left. At the table with me, I also have Aaron Creedy, a Senior Vice President with Brown & Brown, Matt Montgomery, Executive Vice President with Brown & Brown, and Helene Viz, Senior Assistant County Attorney. As per your request, I will present a brief overview of our April 1st, 2022 renewal. Guess I have the slides here. There we go. While the county was able to achieve an overall 2.5 decrease in premium, we are able to achieve a 5% reduction in premium and property and make advantageous changes in some of our policy limits, and most importantly, to clarify some of our terms and conditions, which led to approximately $700 million in additional protections within the current policy limits. Some of the notable policy limit changes were our property. We changed the self-insurance retention for non-wind events from $1 million to $500,000. Terrorism, we increased the limits from $50 million to $100 million, and also increased the active shooter sublimit from $2 million to $5 million. So the slide I showed you before, and I guess I'll pivot back to it for just a second, you'll see in terrorism there was a 55% increase in the cost, and that was most notably because we doubled our coverage at the recommendation of Brown & Brown based on what other folks in our industry are doing. Excess casualty, we increased the crime limit from $50,000 to $250,000, and our workers' compensation, our self-insurance retention increased from $2 million to $2.25 million, but we were also able to lock in a 2-year rate guarantee. And we believe the market is a little bit, for lack of a better word, a little squirrely right now. So we wanted to make sure that we locked in a preferred rate for a 2-year period.
That's a term of art, squirrely?
Squirrely, that's an insurance term.
Okay.
Some of the enhancements, language, and clarification, obviously I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I will highlight some of the ones that we believe are important. Most notably, under the name storm, we had flood coverage. We did not have flood coverage. We had flood coverage separately at a $50 million limit, but it was not necessarily included in the name storm, which has a much higher limit. Through their negotiations, they were able to include that in the name storm. So now we have $130 million worth of flood coverage for a named storm, and also instead of having it's on a per occurrence basis, so instead of having an aggregate where it would pay out up to $130 million over the course of one whole policy year, now it's per occurrence. So for each storm, there's a limit there. Also, the mold was previously excluded, now it's included. So our policy for property is $200 million, so now we have $200 million worth of mold coverage. Land improvements, once again, it was previously excluded, now we have $200 million worth of land improvements. And we also had the removal of the margin clause. We had a margin clause, and I believe you might not remember what we talked about this. This was one of the things that we talked a lot about when we met, I believe it was in last October, and that was whatever we had a building insured for, we had up to 10% over that for a property coverage. They removed that clause, so now any one particular property has coverage up to $200 million. So we're not capped at the 10%. Those are really the things that we wanted to highlight. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but we were able to negotiate, once again, favorable rates. Aaron was a master at going through our policy word by word. We have manuscript policies, meaning they're written particular for us, and there's a lot of language, maybe some ambiguities that were in that language. He was able to clear those up, make sure everything was assigned where it needed to be, and we think we're very well positioned to move forward for this next policy year.
Well, it's certainly gratifying to know that the decision that this board made to have new eyes on our risk has paid off. And Commissioner Bernard, did you want to carry through on the analysis of this?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion once we hear to approve this item. I think that this was a decision that, kind of like against staff's recommendation, but we believe that this was going to be best for the residents of Palm Beach County, and so just want to thank staff for working on this item.
Commissioner Bernard, I'll accept that as a motion. Commissioner Kerner, I see your lights on.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll second the motion by Commissioner Bernard. What was the total, Scott, what was the total amount of reduction in premium from the prior contract for this year, generally speaking?
The premium went down. We noticed a savings over the previous year of about $390,000, and that was the total overall savings.
And I understand there's higher limits and larger protections from, policy limits of per incident occurrence. So it sounds like we're getting a better deal, and I can tell you as a member of the board, it's delightful to have a reduction in what the county has to pay on behalf of our constituents to protect our property, particularly in this very challenging time financially and economically. So I just wanted to take one moment to thank Brown & Brown. I know that it was a difficult process, but you made some representations to this board, and it's clear to me today that Brown & Brown followed through, and I know that has a lot to do with the two of you sitting here before us today. But I really wanted to take a moment to thank Mr. Martin and his staff in risk management, not just on this item, but I think he's an unsung hero, and risk management is an unsung hero in this county administration because of a lot of the things that go on in the background that the public doesn't hear about, that are complex in nature, that are prospective in nature in terms of managing risk. Going through COVID, I had an opportunity to work with Mr. Martin one-on-one on a lot of occasions, whether it was testing, whether it was vaccination issues. And because you do such a good job, you're rarely before this board. And so the flip side of that is we don't get to thank you publicly often. So I deeply appreciate your service to this county, how dynamic you are in following the board's directions and administration's directions, and the way that you execute on a very important mission that most people never hear about. So thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner, and I'll just reiterate those remarks. Mr. Montgomery, you made some representations to us at the time that we were making this decision, and I'm glad to see that you were able to fulfill your promises and not only reduce our premium, but again, expand our coverage in this squirrely time for insurance, and certainly taking advantage of every opportunity out there. I'm assuming that you will continue to be in this endeavor as we continue to go forward with these policies and continue to see these kind of savings going forward. And again, thank you. With that, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? All opposed? Show that is approved, 7-0. And thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for bringing that off of the consent agenda. I think it was worthy of this discussion. Okay. We have finished our consent agenda. Those are not cards for the consent agenda, are they? No. Okay. We're going to move now to public hearings. And our friends at Palm Trend are the first up.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file proof of publication.
I thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for reminding me. It's usually Commissioner Kerner's responsibility, but I will take your motion, and Commissioner Kerner second, and all in favor, all opposed. We have now received and filed the proof of publication. Thank goodness for my friends to my left. Okay. And Mr. Forbes, missed you in Texas, but there were a bunch of tornadoes that sent me out of town a little early, so you didn't miss anything down there. But it was a good seminar, and we missed you.
Great, glad I wasn't there. But we're glad you got home safe, most importantly.
All right. Do we need a presentation now that Mr. Forbes has settled in, or can we have a motion? I have a motion by Commissioner Sacks. This would be a motion to approve 4A1, A, and B. I have a second by Commissioner Kerner. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed. It is approved, 7-0. Mr. Forbes, you are going home with a smile on your face. Now we'll move on to 4A2. We'll see if you're also successful there. Do I have a motion to approve 4A2, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H?
Mr. Mayor, if I may call, we have one public comment on this item.
All right, then let's have it.
Thank you, Mayor. Dwight Mattingly.
Mr. Mattingly, it's always good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you, Mayor and Vice Mayor, and members of the board and administration. I stand here today to support this item, and I would like to make a couple of comments. Number one, I just want to publicly thank the bargaining unit employees who have worked so hard during the last 2 years to maintain and operate the buses. As you may know, we've lost 3 employees to COVID, and the most recent one was a maintenance employee. And part of the budget item covers maintenance, and I just need to talk about, just for a moment, the extraordinary, outstanding job that our maintenance employees are doing. And about 6 years ago, I believe it was, it could be less than that, but with the knocking away of the last 2 years, it's sometimes hard to get in perspective. Going back when it happened, one of our maintenance employees received a Golden Palm Award for his outstanding achievement in being able to repair transmission parts in the buses that was not known to the general maintenance public. And those parts cost right now, I think, around $80,000 a piece. And he was able to dig into that and replace a 25-cent piece instead of replacing an $80,000 piece. And so those type of savings are the things that our employees do on a regular basis. So this funding that is coming from the FTA and that we are asking for helps offset the cost of those things. And I just wanted to go on the record that our employees are doing an excellent job, and thank you, Mr. Forbes, for helping us with replacement of the buses, the newer buses. We've had some glitches sometimes, but we're overcoming those and moving forward, so thank you.
Mr. Mattingly, thank you for your comments, and I want to again thank you and the transit drivers. You are the unsung heroes during this pandemic. Obviously, you were one of the first-line workers facilitating the transport of our residents during a time when everybody was at home trying to stay safe. And we certainly appreciate and we understand that you've lost some of your employees during that period of time, and we're certainly sorry. We also know that we saw the situation down in Broward, and we know there is heroism sometimes involved in that job, and we certainly appreciate everything that you're able to do to maintain the safety of our residents in this county. So again, thank you very much for everything you do to serve our community.
And to our employees, thank you.
Okay, we have, I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, second by Vice Mayor Weiss, to approve 4A2, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Do I have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? I'm sorry, I don't have a light here. Commissioner,
I did, I have it on, but it's,
now your light is on.
I want to thank Dwight Mattingly.
You want to turn on your microphone, Commissioner?
I just want to thank Dwight Mattingly for all the work that he's done on behalf of the men and women who work with our transportation system. He's been an advocate, a strong advocate for the employees for many, many years, and he continues to do so. And that's it. Very much in favor of this agenda item, and I look forward to voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. And on that, I will call the vote. All in favor, all opposed, show that is approved, 7-0. Mr. Forbes, again, you should smile. Okay, we're going to continue with our public hearings. It's time for the Office of Finance and Management and Budget. I am not seeing anybody race to their buttons to go ahead and approve this. I assume we're going to ask for a little of Sherry's information on these items.
Oh, it's continuing. Okay, we're fine.
Yeah, that was just a summary.
Good morning, Sherry Brown, OFMB Director. I have Lisa Master, our Budget Director, David Bahar from our County Attorney's Office. This is our annual mid-year budget cleanup item. What we're doing in this item is we're taking what we estimated when we built the current year budget and make it equal to what actually happened. This item, the amounts are very similar to the last couple of years. However, our revenues did come in a little bit higher than what we estimated during the process. So we have a little bit larger amount that dropped to the bottom line.
Revenue higher, expenses lower?
It was all good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Do we have any comment cards?
No, Mr. Mayor, so moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor of approval of 4B1, A and B? None opposed. You are walking away with another unanimous vote. Okay, public hearings continue, planning, zoning, and building. I'm either looking for a motion, or we're going to let Ramsey come on up and tell us a little bit about what's going on.
I'll make a motion, we adopt an ordinance.
I have a motion by Commissioner Marino. See, I didn't need the sign up there. And I have Vice Mayor seconding. Commissioner Kerner, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, Mr. Mayor. I do have a comment, and not particularly on this agenda item, but related to PZ&B. And I'm sure Commissioner McKinley knows the issues better than I do, but I wanted to take a moment to thank you, Ramsey. I've been following along in the news and from your briefings about some very concerning and really deplorable housing situations in the unincorporated areas of western Palm Beach County. And I followed along very intently regarding your leadership and your action to make sure that these families were relocated very efficiently and very effectively, along with an emergency public hearing to declare those residences uninhabitable. And on behalf of the board, and I'm sure Commissioner McKinley probably has some other comments, but thank you for what you've been able to accomplish so quickly to protect the livelihood and interests of those families.
You're quite welcome, and it was actually a really big team effort. So I just want to also say thank you to Fire, PBSO, Solid Waste, Community Services helped, get those folks moved out, and also my building department. So and also obviously code. So it was quite a big team effort to get it all done. So we'll keep moving forward on it.
Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kerner, for raising that. And I also, I think I thanked staff last time, but there's no amount of thanks that's great enough for everything that they've done. The most recent update on that situation is the magistrate had ordered the property owner to file for 2 different permits. One was an interior demolition permit, the other one was a construction fence permit. By March 17th, both of those deadlines have been missed. So staff has already applied for the county to put up the safety perimeter fencing on the property and also a notice of intent to demolish the structure ourselves. And all of those costs associated with our expenses in doing that would then be leaned back onto the property owner across whatever properties she has in that particular company's name. And I would just ask that staff expedite that demolition permit, whether it has to go through legal or whatever department it has to go through, but that we don't waste any more time. This situation has been ongoing for a few years. This property owner has had enough time to correct the situation and has failed to do so, and continues to try to place the blame on others and ask for extensions. And I know 3 or 4 weeks ago when we were here, her fines had already accumulated to $350,000, and now that she's missed the permit deadlines, they continue to accrue at $500 a day, at least for the demolition permit. It's a disgusting situation. I've seen some deplorable housing situations in the Glades, as you know. This definitely, I would say that, and the conditions we saw at Okeechobee Center with the little baby that had cockroaches in his ear, these 2 are definitely the top 2 situations. And I hope it sends a warning shot out to other property owners across our county that these living situations will not be tolerated. Just before I came into our commission meeting today, we did a very short proclamation presentation to our Farm Workers Association and just thank them for all the work that they do. But also Mr. Green was in that photo with us and let me know that one of the residents who was living in the Joe Louis apartments reached out to him to let him know that we saved her life. The mold conditions had ended up hospitalizing her, and since she left the facility, her health conditions have improved greatly. And I think that's what we do up here as local leaders. You know, there's a whole lot of nonsense being talked about in Washington and, you know, inflammatory stuff going on in Tallahassee, but at the local level, we're saving lives every day. And we should be proud of the work that our staff does so that we can sit up here and preach the good work that they've done. I also don't want to leave out Shannon Fox. She was a rock star in that magistrate hearing. And I was listening to it from Tallahassee, and I kept texting her. I'm like, do you want me to speak? And she's like, nope, I got this, stay quiet. So just, you know, the legal team often doesn't get the recognition, but I just want to make sure that Shannon got a little shout out on that. So thank you.
And update on the demolition, notice of intent to demolish has been filed and recorded. Obviously, working with the county attorney's office, the 30-day clock starts. I'm sure they're going to try appeal it, and we'll just defend that.
Very good. Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner McKinley and I share a lot of areas that are county, pure county, no cities. And I wonder if we have, I know cities have regular inspection programs, but do we as a county government, do we have a program whereby the county will inspect housing projects or housing to see if they are at least the minimum standards for you know, for people to live there? This is a wonderful thing we did, but wow, it's taken a long time, and we have the legal basis to go up to the magistrate and get it you know, condemned. But Ramsey, do you have anything in your toolbox where we can, as a county government, go out and look at certain houses, projects, whether they're apartments or condos, to make sure they are fit for human habitation?
So we don't currently, other than the fact if someone calls in a complaint, then we can come and inspect. But what you're talking probably about is a rental registration type program where every rental unit would then be inspected by us. It's just a manpower situation. Each code officer is responsible for about 7,000 properties, so it's a Herculean task to add more. But if that's something that the board wants us to look into, I know some other jurisdictions do have that. We can at least look into it and run numbers and see how it would shake out.
I would request, Mayor, that we look into the fact that the cities have inspections of buildings that are not suited for you know, for people to live there. I just hate to see us get behind the 8 ball on a housing project here that was woefully inadequate. I mean, I think you've been quoted to say this is one of the worst cases you've seen. Well, this didn't happen overnight. It's been going on for a while, and then we have to get the legal team in to have it, you know, determined to be destroyed. But I wonder if, Mayor, we could look into the fact that county buildings, those that are outside of city limits, that Commissioner McKinley and I both have in our districts, that we would look into having inspections similar to what the cities have throughout the county, at least to examine it. Let staff take a look at it and see if it's something that's viable for us to have.
Mr. Rutter.
Mayor, if I could, keeping that thought in mind, we will be coming back to you. You know, the session closed. I'm going to flip over to building recertification for just a second, but I think it's relevant to this topic as well. We'll be coming back to you to discuss your direction following the session closing without any legislation on it. If the board wanted to take it up as a larger talking point at that time, it might be relevant to commingle both topics at that time if the board would like to do it that way.
And I heard today there's a possibility of a special session where this might come back again, but I think that it would be appropriate for us to start looking at what needs to be done if our friends in Tallahassee don't step into this arena?
Absolutely. We're keeping a close eye on that. That was focused on the condo side of the business. That seemed to muddy the waters towards the end. But we'll be looking to come back to you. We've already been in touch with the League of Cities, and probably the working group that we had will have another meeting of that group as well in the near future, just to be able to speak to what the cities are doing. But we can take up those topics and the board's direction at that time if you'd like to do it that way.
Okay, Commissioner McKinley?
Yes, thank you. Mayor, if you don't mind, to respond to Commissioner Sacks' comments. The Florida Department of Health, and it's actually in our next agenda item, does the inspections for any of the units that are used for seasonal farm workers. And that is part of the reason is the fees that the state allows them to charge are woefully low. And our next agenda item would actually increase those a little bit so that we can get all of those housing units inspected. And I really want to thank our county administrator. Her sorority sister is the secretary of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. When we were in Washington for our NACO meetings, she arranged for us through our friend, former state representative Alan Williams, who's a deputy assistant secretary there now, for us to meet with her. And this was right after this situation reared its head in my office. And so, Commissioner Sacks, we did actually ask her about beefing up the inspection programs that HUD does where taxpayer dollars are utilized. And Ms. Baker, if I could ask you if we could follow up on that meeting that we had, that would be great. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Sacks?
Thank you so much, Commissioner McKinley. I think that the whole issue with the reserves on condo is going to be a discussion that we may follow through if there is a special session, but this is different. And it may be that Commissioner McKinley's right with regard to the Department of Health doing this, but I would like to see our engineering and our staff, particularly with Ramsey, to take a look at coming back with us on a report as to what we do to make sure that we have housing units wherever they may be in the county, outside of cities, because cities already do it. So we have housing units in the county that meet the minimum standards for people to live there, So I wonder if, and I know, Mr. Rutter, that you want to combine this in with the Surfside and the whole condo reserves, but I would like to also look at this as a side note, because that's so fraught with political implications on the condos and whether they should have reserves. I'd like to look at, as a side note, when you do that study, also, are there any buildings in this county today that do not meet the minimum requirements for people to live there? That's what I would like to have a report back to our board, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
That's a pretty broad request, and I think that the administrator would like to make a comment.
Staff agrees with you. It is egregious to have people living in unsafe, indecent housing. I am a huge proponent of safe, affordable, decent housing. Give us an opportunity to get together as staff, do some research on what other counties as well as cities are doing, and then we'll bring a report back to this board. There are significant ramifications, and we will need to work with property owners, and I think legal can chime in on this, but there's a fine line to walk. And so we'll walk that fine line and make sure that we give those owners an opportunity to improve the property. But when we start to talk about looking at minimum standards and moving people out, I've got to have somewhere to move them to. So we're going to look at all those implications. We'll bring that report back to the board. And then for those that are such as the ones we found that was egregious, we're going to take action because we already have the authority to do so through code enforcement. But we'll look at this particular the direction the board has given us, and we'll bring back a report.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think there's one area that we can definitely narrow in on, and I mentioned HUD and, of course, USDA, and I will be going back out to Okeechobee Center with our representatives from our 2 U.S. Senate offices in about 2 weeks. But I know that our Assistant County Administrator in the Legislative Affairs Department will be presenting the federal agenda to us fairly soon, and so maybe there's a way to incorporate language as it relates to that very narrow topic of those particular housing units in our federal agenda, so we could give staff direction for them to look into adding that.
Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. Being one of the few people here that was on a city council before county commission, there is no program in the cities where they do what Maria is suggesting. What is triggered would be any kind of permit that is pulled would trigger an inspection. I know when I had my business license and I gave them a particular address, they did an inspection for that business address. But it's code enforcement that is, they are out there and they see what's going on, or they are called. But there is no program in place in a city that goes in and randomly inspects units of this nature. So I just want you to Maria, I wanted to clear that up for you. They are triggered by other permits that are pulled or other business licenses that are pulled. That's what would trigger an inspection of a unit like this. So, or an individual calling and complaining, or a code enforcement officer being out there and seeing something. So it's not a program that a city has. It's triggered by other events. The inspection would be triggered by another event.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just remind you, Commissioner Bernard and I both hail from city service, so we have that experience. Okay, Senator Sachs.
Not ever having served in the city, I look forward to what our administrator said with regard to this report and to what Commissioner McKinley said about bringing in the feds. And I'd like to have a date that the staff could bring us, and some of the statistics. For example, how many housing units do we have in unincorporated Palm Beach County where we have had complaints about, cockroaches in a child's ear? This is Palm Beach. This should not happen here. This should not, shame on us. So let's move forward and let's not wait until we have children who are ill because of mold, and whatever we need to do to step up to the plate to make sure that the west side of the county matches the east side when it comes to safety and decent housing. So if we could, Madam Administrator, if we could have some type of date that we could have a review of, I'd like to just see the statistics of how many of these housings have we had issues with before, and to bolster what our good staff does.
Madam,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner, I'm just asking for clarification. Are you asking for a workshop, or are you just asking for this to be a report that'll be disseminated to the board?
I don't think we actually need a workshop. I think what we need is, I need to know numbers here. I need to know statistics. I need to know as Commissioner, what's your name? Maria.
Marino.
Commissioner Marino, that do we have issues here in the county? And how many do we have? How many housing do we have? Just give us the statistics. We can review them. We can look at them, and then we can plan accordingly as to whether we need a workshop, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so, Madam Administrator, if you could have a report generated for our review, and then we can make a decision on any action item after that, that would be great. All right, now, after all that conversation, I think we'd need to circle back because we have an agenda item in front of us which is not quite on what we've been discussing. So just to refresh our recollections, the mortgage crisis created some issues for our county, and the county was challenged to identify and locate responsible parties to be notified if a property was in disrepair. And we put in place a fee to the mortgage holders to basically register and annually renew if it was applicable with respect to those properties. We are now making some modifications to that fee schedule. The amendment revises the annual fee imposed to clearly reflect that the fee is collected by the county or its designee and is to cover the cost of the registration program. That being said, I'm looking for a motion. I have a motion by Vice Mayor Weiss. I have a second by Commissioner Marino. All in favor? All opposed? Show that as being approved, 7-0. Thank you very much. It was a worthwhile conversation. We're now going to change hats for a moment. We're going to recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Environmental Control Board. Okay, we are now the Environmental Control Board, and we have an item, public hearing, that's for the Health Department. Staff recommending an approval of an ordinance which would amend the list of activities required to be permitted, licensed, or approved as necessary due to changes in the law and regulations of the state of Florida, update the fees schedule necessary to keep pace with rising cost and current regulations, and there's a revenue increase, if this is approved, of $974,840. Do I have anybody who was ready to make a motion?
I'll make
Commissioner Kerner.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, and just want to say that as it relates to the farm worker housing inspection fees, I did have an opportunity to speak with Senate President Wilton Simpson before the start of session and raise this issue with him, and thinking of what his next role might be, asking him if he could make that a priority to at least have the state cover the cost of the expenses to make sure people are living safely. And I want to congratulate Dr. Alonso for her national, I think it was Women of Distinction or Community Leader, whatever it was, for being a hero. Congratulations on your recognition. And with that, Mayor, I'll move the motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner McKinley. Commissioner Kerner, do you desire a second?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Second, with a very brief comment. Obviously, we've all been educated or reminded about the broad scope and authority and duties that the Department of Health has in the state of Florida and in our county. Not just from COVID or not just to the public health side of transmissible diseases, but an array of public health issues. And these fees have been insufficient and too low for a long time, and so it's important that this board use its authority to pass this agenda item. And of course, congratulations to our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Alina Alonso. So it's my pleasure to second this.
Okay, seeing no further lights on, do we have any cards? No cards. Okay, all in favor, all opposed. Show that as approved, 7-0. And I reiterate our congratulations to you, Dr. Alonso. And while we're congratulating people and we're going to reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners, I think it's noteworthy that our administrator has been honored. She received the national honor as one of 16 women who moved the nation, including Speaker Pelosi and Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. And we certainly tip our hats to you, Madam Administrator. Okay, we are back on as the County Board of County Commissioners. We've reconvened, and we're moving on to Planning and Zoning. 4C1, we have an ordinance. No, I'm sorry. I didn't turn my page.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5A1.
5A1. I have a motion by Commissioner Bernard, second by the Vice Mayor. Do I have any further discussion or cards? Seeing none. All in favor, all opposed. That is approved, 7-0. All right. Ms. Beebe, it's always nice to see you, even if you don't make it over here to the seat. It's a shame that you have to make this trip over here, but we'll get you a hovercraft so you can make it a lot quicker next time.
A vertiplane.
Yeah, the Liliums are coming. The Liliums are coming.
Commissioner McKinley, 5B1.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5B1 and thank staff for following up on all of the leads we get from USDA for rural housing, for rural development grant dollars. This will more than almost double the budget that we have this application. But also, I just want to point out to staff that this is the benefit of being involved with the National Association of Counties and participating on those policy steering committees and the different caucuses that we have. I'm a member of the Rural Caucus, which gets me a little bit of laughter when I show up at those meetings, but also the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Policy Steering Committee. The staff at NACO sends us, the committee members, the updates when these funding availability notices are about to come out. We get a little bit of heads up. I forward all of those to Sherry, and she has followed up on them, and just want to say that's the benefit of being involved with NACO, and thanks Sherry for following up on that.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. And I'm going to point out that the Intermediary Relending Program funds are federal funds which require no local match. That being said,
And I think, if you don't mind, Mayor, if Sherry could just very quickly give us some examples of how that funding has benefited the western communities, I would appreciate that.
very good. Do you want to go before or after the staff presentation, Mr. Kerner?
Sorry, Mayor, I didn't have any comments. I just wanted to make sure that I alerted you that we do have one comment card to Mr. Dwight Mattingly.
Very good. Okay. Sherry?
Thank you, Sherry Howard from the Department of
I think your microphone is off.
Usually I can speak loud enough. Sherry Howard, Department of Housing and Economic Development. This has been a very valuable tool for us in the Glades. We've helped 11 businesses in Belglade, 2 in Pahokee, and 1 in Loxahatchee. It was a very small electric company that's really grown. It provides gap financing to businesses up to 40%. It has a very favorable interest rate and term, and we utilize that funding almost 98%, and we have quite a number of businesses in the pipeline right now that are ready to use the funding if we're awarded. So we appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Seeing no more lights, and Commissioner Kerner corrected himself, we do not have a comment card on this item, so I'm going to look for a motion to approve. Commissioner Sachs, I see you making the motion to approve. Commissioner McKinley. When's the last time we had a meeting? All right, all in favor, all opposed. It's approved 7-0, with Commissioner McKinley being the second on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Mr. Forbes hanging in the back of the room, and I thought it was just because you were very attentive with our meetings, but no, you have another item on the agenda. Item 5C1, A, B, and C. Do we need a presentation? I see Vice Mayor Weiss saying he's ready to make a motion to approve. Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In correcting myself, it's important that I now note that we do have one speaker on 5C1 and Dwight Mattingly.
Okay, very good. I'm going to entertain the motion that Vice Mayor made. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Kerner. Do we need a presentation? Do we want to go straight to the comment? I don't see a real need for a presentation. Mr. Mattingly, come on up.
Thank you again, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Commissioners. Just wanted to make several comments in support of this item. As you can see, and you have been made aware, I'm sure, in private meetings with Mr. Forbes, or meetings with Mr. Forbes, at your offices, there is increase to the number of positions that have been made, and 6 of those positions are positions that we represent. In fact, there's a whole new department that we have been tasked with called the Transit Electronic System Technicians. And those are the technicians that will be working on the radios, maintaining them, and the Avail system, which is the GPS system, for lack of a better term, for you to understand, as well as the head signs on the buses and announcements in the buses, all those things electronic. And we have been working closely with Mr. Forbes in connection with that, and What I wanted to point out to you is over the past 2 years, we have tried to maintain a level of service that would meet the needs of the public. Mr. Forbes and I have worked very closely in doing that, and sometimes the service levels would be impacted because we didn't have the amount of employees, and sometimes it was because we recognized that we could not continue to operate the same level of service because of carrying passengers on our bus, and you're well aware of those things. But what has happened as a result of this, and I only point this out because I want you to understand where we are standing right now, that we have been greatly impacted as a result of COVID with regard to our employee base. And several things have contributed to that besides the health and well-being of them, their individual selves and their families. Many of our legacy employees have taken the opportunity to go ahead and retire during this time, which leaves us short of many employees. And that's put a great challenge on the rest of the employees to step forward and pick up the slack. Without getting into the weeds of details, I'll just say this, that it's given us the opportunity to work with Mr. Forbes and put forth some innovative suggestions that we worked together to help fill the gap during that time. But with that being said, we're faced with a job market that is so competitive that right now, what we had previously negotiated with our wages are just not giving us the opportunity to hire and retain employees. And I know it's a struggle for many employers, but I want you to know that we are working with Mr. Forbes to try to, in the interim, because we're getting ready to go into negotiations in a few months, but in the interim, we're trying to work to make sure that we still offer that public service that we're in the business to do. And I will tell you.
Ms. Mattingly, I've given you a little extra time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Thank you. I will tell you that the employees have stepped forward and worked tirelessly to fix this, and we are working with Mr. Forbes to make it happen. So thank you for passing this, and I support Mr. Forbes in this endeavor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mattingly, and certainly your issues and the ones you've just brought up are endemic to our entire county. We know in hospitality, in construction, in just employees for the county, that it's a very, very tight labor market, and we certainly are trying to do the best we can under the circumstances we have, and we appreciate everybody doubling their efforts to make this successful. I just had one question for the county administrator. I see where we are obviously adding some expenses here, a couple of $100,000 for the maintenance of this system to ensure the storage and retrieval of the videos that we are creating. What is our policy or procedure with respect to capturing those expenses for the requests which we're obviously going to be receiving as the legal community knows that these are available?
This will fall under the purview of our existing, which is governed by the state, how much we can charge on a per page basis or time. So we'll follow our normal procedure on what it costs. If it doesn't take very much time to do it, it's free. If we, they'll put in their request, we then tell them what the estimated cost will be, and they'll either submit the check and then we'll provide them the requested information, or if they submit it and it doesn't cost much, then we release it free.
Maintaining the system obviously costs money. So do we try and capture any of that money, or is it only incremental costs that are resulting from the specific requested information?
It is the incremental cost. It is, staff is there, the information is there. If it is not taking up an absorbent amount of time, as I stated, there's a statute that governs it all, then we don't charge. If it exceeds that allotted time or page, then yes, we charge a certain percentage, but nowhere near covering the cost.
All right, very good. All right, that being said, I don't recall if we had a motion and
Make
second.
a motion to approve item 5C1, A, B, and C.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. I have a motion. I'm looking for a second. Commissioner Sacks, you are recognized for your second. So for 5C1, A, B, and C, all in favor, all opposed, show that is approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can go home now, Mr. Forbes, but take a bus. All right, we are on item 5D1, Facilities Development and Operations. We have a motion to approve continuing construction manager at risk contract with the following contractors: Robling Architecture and Kest Construction. Do I have a motion?
Commissioner?
I am sorry, Commissioner Bernard. Thank goodness I have you over there to remind me of things like recognizing you. You are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This was an item that was in our last agenda item, our last meeting, and I wanted to make sure we get more information about it, so in that way we can make an informed decision regarding this item. And so I wanted to get more information from staff, and so
Then we will have a presentation.
Yes.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. It's me, Ayala, Director of Facilities Development and Operations. With me today is Michael Jones, Chief Assistant County Attorney. This item recommends approval of a continuing construction manager at-risk contract with Robling Architecture Construction, Inc. and Cass Construction Company, LLC, for the Fire Station Capital Improvements Program renovations on an as-needed basis through March 21, 2027. This continuing contract provides for the implementation of the renovation component of the Fire Rescue's Comprehensive Capital Improvement Program. The aforementioned construction managers at risk will provide pre-construction and construction management services for each renovation project pursuant to a contractually guaranteed maximum price. The specific requirements of the work shall be determined by individual task orders, work orders, and amendments issued against this continuing contract. Projects will be assigned on a per-station basis with the possibility of multiple renovations projects proceeding concurrently at numerous county-owned and managed fire stations. The scope of work includes, but is not limited to, roof repairs or replacement, window and or door replacements, primary and secondary power system replacement, heating and air conditioning system upgrades and replacement of fueling systems, parking, paving, grading, drainage improvements, interior improvements to better facilitate operations, fencing and security work, and access control and system improvements and installation, among other matters. The solicitation for the construction managers was advertised on February 28, 2021, according to the Equal Business Opportunity Ordinance, with final selection taking place on June 10, 2021. Protests to the proposed award were filed by Cass, Robling, and Core Construction Services of Florida. Cass' protest was denied by the county's purchasing director due to lack of standing. Robling's protest was upheld, leading to a revised award posting, which then triggered Core's protest filing. A lengthy protest process ensued, which included a hearing before a special master. On November 30, 2021, the special master issued its decision to deny Core's protest and uphold the purchasing director's decision. The described process now completed, the staff is presenting the items to the board for consideration and recommending approval. This concludes staff presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions as you may deem it appropriate.
Commissioner Bernard, did you have any questions?
I do, but I think Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. We're reminded today that this board, as it sits in its current composition, has taken a more proactive and a higher level of interest in the award of these very large, what I would term very large, but also very important contracts to those that endeavor to work on behalf of the county, particularly in this setting where it's fire rescue, and the items that you discussed are obviously very important to the functional operational ability of our fire rescue service. I would like some background, and I appreciate Commissioner Bernard bringing this item to our attention from the last county commission meeting, because I know that this has gone on over what seems like a couple years. I think it was originally bid out as a larger set of contracts, and then that was refined, and then there were a bunch of protests. And I have particular interest in some of the evaluation criteria on the minority and women-owned business enterprise portion. But my first question has to do with the final selection committee recommended core construction. So we had an initial finding by the professional staff that I think was it core and Roebling should be the top two, or was it core and cast?
Core and cast.
And then there were some protests, and I know that that's not unusual. But what strikes me as odd is that one of the companies that was selected initially protested the selection of the other party being selected. What is, and I know that you are not a mind reader or have a crystal ball, although sometimes you seem like you do, and we appreciate that. Just because we're lay people up here, why would that ever happen? Why would someone that's awarded a contract try to intervene? And obviously it was without standing, we know that, and I could guess that even not having gone to law school, but why, what are we missing there when a company says, we don't want to work with this other company?
So I certainly cannot speak to the motives behind that protest. I can tell you that when the protest was received by the purchasing director, that was precisely the reason why it was denied, lack of standing. Under the purchasing code, the ordinance states that only aggrieved parties can protest an award, okay? So the purchasing director finding was that they were not an aggrieved party because they were being recommended for award, and therefore the protest could not proceed.
All right, but then of course the company that wasn't selected joined in that protest, and they prevailed through the purchasing director's decision, not, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No,
So-
please, because I may be totally wrong.
So I apologize for interrupting. But there were actually two companies selected, recommended for award, okay? This RFP was drafted so that we were going to select two companies, okay? So in the first posting of award, CAST and CORE were recommended for award, okay? When that posting occurred, we received what I'm gonna call the first round of protests, okay? And at that point, we received a protest from Roebling, who was the third-ranked company, and a protest from CAST. Purchasing director reviewed both of them. She denied the one from CAST for the reasons that I previously stated, and then she upheld the one from Roebling. Once she did so, she instructed FDO to repost a revised award, okay? And that second revision or award recommendation led to the protest by CORE, who was at the time, after the revised award, not a recommended party for contract. So we go in with Roebling, with CORE and CAST, award gets revised, and then the recommended companies become CAST and Roebling.
And what was the basis of the revised award?
When the initial protest was filed, a question was raised about the local business preference points that were awarded to one of the then recommended companies, to CORE. Okay? After going through the review process, the purchasing director issued a determination that stated that the 5 points had been incorrectly awarded. Therefore, those points were removed from the previous calculation, and that revised accounting of points led to a revised award. Then dropping CORE to the third position and having CAST and Roebling become the first two. and therefore recommended for award.
I realize this isn't a court case, but oftentimes when the appellate courts look at a decision of the trial court, and they find error in the underlying decision, usually the remedy isn't for the appellate court to define what should happen. They usually send it back to the trial court and say, reevaluate this issue and come up with a different decision. Why in this instance was it the unilateral decision of the purchasing director to remove points from a final ranking? Understanding that her methodology and final outcome may have been correct, and I don't know, but why would that decision be made unilaterally to take those points away and not send it back to the selection committee for further evaluation?
I'm going to go ahead and open the response saying that under the purchasing code, the purchasing director has the authority to do so and revise awards. And with that broad statement, I'm going to pass it along to Mike Jones.
I'm in full agreement with that statement that is to be made. Essentially, under the purchasing code protest provisions, the purchasing director has the authority to uphold or deny a protest. And if the upholding of a protest will change ranking or scoring or anything of that nature, Director of Purchasing has the authority to require that the award be reposted.
Is that a function of authority delegated or an ordinance passed by this board?
It is in the purchasing ordinance, yes.
Right. So is it common practice in other jurisdictions to allow that authority to be solely and universally housed in one official that hasn't been elected or confirmed by this board?
I don't know that I can speak to what the common practice is. I know what the purchasing code includes.
Do those unilateral decisions become binding on this board as we endeavor to make a final selection like we are here today, possibly?
I mean, the board can reject, it's really through the special master process. I mean, the board can reject the determination of the special master. I will say I don't think that the board can tell the Director of Purchasing to do something that is set forth in the ordinance. I mean, it's, you can't waive.
Sure, I'm not
ordinance.
even opening up that can of worms. I'm just saying, once that decision is made, do we take it in an advisory capacity? Because the case law that I read that was provided by the purchasing director reiterates that it's the broad discretion of the elected body to make these decisions, and that trial courts won't disturb that decision on appeal by those protesting parties once it reaches either the circuit or district courts of appeal. And I know that, and I'm not sure who the purchasing director was at the time, but you weren't involved in that unilateral decision, but do either of you have further information as to the substance and content of that decision? I know that we've been provided a brief overview, but in terms of the actual substance of the decision-making process and the protest itself, or can you inform this board further?
Certainly. So to answer your first question, it was Kathy Scarlett at the time. This happened before she retired. She was the purchasing director. Let me, if I may, walk you through how the protest process works, okay? So this is an RFP that was issued under the facilities director authority as a construction department, okay? So it was an RFP that was published through FDO, okay? We went through the process, we went through shortlist and final selection committees. An award was recommended by those committees, okay, and got posted as part of the process. When the protest came in, the protest per purchasing code is received by the purchasing director. There is an internal process that we follow where the purchasing director sends a copy of the protest to the department that is involved in the process and requests that the department provide all the documents related through the entire RFP process and the department's position on the analysis to better inform her own analysis of the protest. In that process, we reviewed all our documents and sent them to Ms. Scarlett. And in doing that review, we realized that a sublease had been submitted by one of the companies, and we needed to require at the time a copy of the lease, okay? When we went to that step, we identified that the local preference had been recommended based on a sublease that came from a lease, obviously, and that base lease provided for one office to be occupied by one person, okay? Which at the time we realized will not be sufficient to carry a significant portion of the work as required under the local preference ordinance. At that point, we submitted that information to the purchasing director. I cannot speak as to the rest of the analysis she did, obviously, because that's something the purchasing director must carry by his or herself. And then the final determination proceeded to remove those 5 points, and that's how FDO was directed to proceed and then repose a revised award.
Is there any further information in the record that we can access as to the arguments in opposition to the protest that against CORE? In other words, did CORE admit that it was just a one-person office, or that they had the sublease that wasn't sufficient under the code? Because I don't have transcripts, and I didn't watch, and I wasn't a party to the special master hearing. Was that point disputed at all, or?
They did dispute it during the hearing.
What was the basis of their dispute?
I mean, there were a couple issues. I think one of them was that they had the opportunity to use other space within the same building, maybe a conference room, maybe a break room, something of that nature. They also brought up the fact that I think it's construction work. A lot of the construction work may take place in the field or something of that nature. And I think they may have brought up, sort of telework, COVID type issues as well.
Which certainly, I don't know when this process officially started, but I assume that sometime between the official start of the original bid and where we are today, a lot has changed in the environment of professional workspaces, particularly in light of COVID. Was it going on prior to COVID, or we don't know?
This process started in February 2021, so about a year
Oh, wow.
ago.
It was right on the heels of it. All right, I may have some further questions, but I can tell you that in my individual capacity, anytime another commissioner brings up concerns about the award of RFPs, and certainly this is no criticism of you or your department or any department, quite frankly, it's just the full vindication of our authority as a board. Speaking for myself only, I will take these issues very, very seriously and do my due diligence, and I think that's what today is about. So thank you for your time here today.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner, and I see the administrator would like to give some input. You're turning your light off. You're going to remain quiet. Okay. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, I have a couple questions, but I think it's for, I guess, the three ranked companies. So the first one is, I guess, to Roebling Architecture Construction. I don't know if they're here. Anybody from Roebling? This is me. I may have, maybe you can answer it. In regards to the minority participation in this deal, what is the percentage that Roebling is teaming up or giving with their minority business person?
Let me go back to my notes.
Okay.
I do have that information here, if you give me a second. So let me go back to refresh, if I may, what was the requirement for this RFP. As you know, as part of our process, we go to the goal setting committee before we issue. So the requirement was an SBE subcontracting goal for the contract of 20% participation, out of which 5% must be African American. And going back to the proposals, Roebling had 15% allocated to a company named MCO, and 5% to Stewart Architecture.
15% to MCO?
And 5% to Stewart Architecture.
Stewart Architecture. In regards to CAST Construction, I think we have a representative from CAST here.
Mr. Mayor, just for your information, we do have one official speaking card for Dave DeMay, Cass Construction.
This is just a question for now, so I know he's probably going to have 3 minutes. But Dave, if you're able to just provide us the minority participation with your group.
Sure. So our teammates on the project are All Site Construction and Cooper Construction Management. They'll each receive 25% of the CM overhead and profit fee. And their teams will fully staff these projects with our oversight.
Thank you very
Far
much.
exceeding the goals.
Thank you very much, Dave.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And do we have a representative from CORE?
Come on up. Please identify yourself for the record.
Marty Perry for the record.
Yeah, Mr. Perry, if you can tell us exactly what the pre-construction and the construction percentage for your team
Was 49.65% in both cases.
And what does that entail if you don't?
I'm sorry.
Can you tell us what does that mean?
That means that of the 8 WMPEs that were participating on behalf of CORE, that they each shared a total of 49.65% of the pre-construction and the actual construction, if any, that was to be, in dollars that were to be earned by the projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. Isami, a question in regards to, does any of these projects take into account, because cancer's it's a big issue for firefighters. Does any of these projects take into account this issue?
So I need to go back to a related effort that we have ongoing. About a year and a half ago, this Board of County Commissioners approved a contract with Curry Sowers Aguila for design services for the Comprehensive Fire Rescue Capital Improvement Plan. That design contract includes 4 different phases. One of those phases is programmatic assessments and precisely the design of the renovations that will be implemented under this contract. As part of the scope of work on the design services side, one of the things that we asked from the design team was precisely to make sure that as fire stations were being renovated, the necessary spaces to take care of decontamination needs, to make sure that contaminants that the firefighters might be carrying on their gear will not come into the fire station, be designed to then be implemented through construction in the renovation process. So to the extent that the construction managers will build what is designed by the design team, and the design team will take in consideration, as per our requirements, making sure that decontamination areas are provided, my answer to your question will be yes, it gets captured through the overall process.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand CORE is here. We heard from Mr. Perry from CORE. CAST is here, and I know that Dave DeMay wants to speak at some point, but Mr. DeMay, would you be willing to answer a question from the board, another question? And thank you for being here today. I will say from my perspective, particularly on a RFP in as large in scope and size and resources as this, it's very important to me that those that are endeavoring to do this important work appear before the board so that we can do our constitutional duty on behalf of our constituents and voters when we award contracts as large as this. We need an opportunity to understand from our perspective who we're hiring and acting as our agents. Can you cast any further light on the issue that came up initially that raised red flags to me? So I want to give you an opportunity to explain. CAS was awarded an interest in this RFP initially. and then made a protest as a non-aggrieved party against CORE. Why would that happen?
I'm a simple guy. It's a simple answer. There's a requirement in the RFP to have a local preference. I'm based in West Palm Beach. The other company, CORE, is based in Phoenix, Arizona. They have an office that they put in their RFP as home office, University Park, Florida. That's not Palm Beach County. Let's keep projects local with local firms. That's it, simple.
But, you know, I don't want to say look a gift horse in the mouth, because this isn't a gift.
Right.
You competed in expert fashion, and you were awarded it. What was the intended outcome of that?
That another local firm would be along with us doing local work. Roebling Construction,
Roebling, okay.
based in Palm Beach County.
Wonderful. Can I call a representative from Roebling up, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
Can we have a representative of Roebling come up then, so that I can continue this dialogue?
I don't see anybody coming up to the microphone.
Is Roebling here today?
I do not know. They're busy doing construction jobs in Palm Beach County.
Well, I appreciate that. Certainly not all the members of their team are out there on the construction side. I would think on an issue as important as this, as a constructor, the maintenance and repair of our firefighting facilities, and them being, as you say, a homegrown Palm Beach County-based business, that they would appear before this board to answer very important questions about the future and efficacy of our firefighting system.
Commissioner Kerner, I think we've gotten really into the weeds on this, and I think we should make a decision at this point whether we want to defer our decision on this until another meeting of the board and allow all the parties to know that we'd like to have them here to give testimony if that's your will. Otherwise, I think, you know, we've been digging into this, and I think the facts are pretty clear at this point as far as the process that we've gone through. So I think we need to make a decision at this point whether we want to have a full hearing on this and allow the parties to all have notice of that so they can have representation.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond, this is my opportunity to get the facts and cross-examine those that endeavor to be agents of this county. That is my opportunity here today.
And I don't disagree with you, but I just think Roebling should not be held accountable for the fact they're not here today, because they certainly didn't have notice that there was going to be a contentious issue. So that's my personal feeling. The chair certainly stands willing to go in the direction that this body wishes to go.
Mr. Mayor,
I just had one more comment.
Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Okay.
I'll just have one more comment, because you know, the efficient adjudication of these issues is as a board as a whole, so I don't want to cause any problems. But Commissioner Bernard informed the community that this was an issue at the last meeting. It certainly was properly noticed, and today is this process of making that adjudication. I'm certainly more than happy to abide by the mayor's wishes to temper and table my concerns today, if that's the direction that you would like to go in. But it's very important to me that we are clear that this was not improperly noticed, and that all the parties that had an interest in this decision today were properly noticed, and that today was that day to make this adjudication. So if you'd like to do that another time, I will still have questions then, and hopefully I'll be afforded a full opportunity to make my inquiry then.
And as you properly said, this is noticed as a regular agenda item, so all parties knew that this could have the results that we're in the process of now, investigating and determining whether we as a board are ready to ratify the recommendations that are being made by the staff. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I think I'm prepared to make a motion, and you know, we can kind of like make a decision. I believe that we should reject the determination of the special master, and to go back to the top two, that the final selection the final selection ordinal score tally sheet, which award the contract to Core Construction and Cast Construction. I believe that Cast Construction, they are here. They do great work in Palm Beach County, in the community. And the selection committee selected Core Construction and Cast, and that we should stick with those two. Going into the spirit of our minority business enterprise that we've established here with Robin Construction, as was stated by staff. They're receiving 15% to MCO and 5% to, I believe, Stewart Architecture. Cast Construction, they have two teammates, which is Allsite and Cooper Construction, and 25% of that of pre-construction and construction is going to our minority business enterprises. And Core Construction, as was stated by Mr. Perry, 49.65% of the pre-construction and the construction is going to 8 minority business enterprises that are here.
All right.
Second,
Commissioner Kerner, so I'm going to accept the motion to substitute for Roebling, Core, and Cast to be the second contractor. I have a second by Commissioner Kerner.
I have a second with a very brief comment so that you can understand why I'm seconding this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the motion made by Commissioner Bernard, and in making that second to the motion, I'm reminded of the case law provided by the purchasing director within the response to this RFP protest, Liberty County versus Baxter Asphalt, Florida Supreme Court 1982, in which it states, in Florida, on the other hand, a public body, which we are, has wide discretion in soliciting and accepting bids for public improvements, which is what we've done, and its decision of the public board, which we are, when based on an honest exercise of this discretion, will not be overturned by a court, even if it may appear erroneous and even if reasonable persons may disagree. I say that because Commissioner Bernard has laid a very solid foundation for the departure from the recommendations of the purchasing director. But at the same time, I've been given an opportunity, and I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, to use my broad discretion as a policymaker and elected official to further delve into and investigate what has transpired here. And what I've uncovered are a litany of things that I think are not unusual. But the more important point for me is that if those in our community that wish to act as agents on behalf of this county and this county commission, particularly in issues as important as the repair and construction and maintenance of our fire rescue stations, if those that are submitting responses to the RFP believe that this board will just simply defer to the final recommendations of professional staff, which, by the way, they're excellent recommendations, but if those in the community that respond to RFPs think that we're going to abandon our duty and our obligation as constitutional officers in making these decisions and simply act as a rubber stamp, I hope this board has reminded those companies and those agents that that's not what this board will do. And here today I had very important questions about the efficacy of the ability of these bidders to do the job, and I was met with silence by one bidder in particular, and that's not acceptable to me. If you are asking for us to make a decision, then I need, as a policymaker, an opportunity to interact with you in public and with my colleagues present, and I haven't had that opportunity today. We could have done it in the future. They should have been here today, but they're not. But a motion's been made, and I've seconded it, and I support it fully.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. I'm going to pass the gavel to my vice mayor for a moment here. I'm going to make a substitute motion now to defer consideration of this item until April 5th. I think much too much has been discussed today to try and do this on the fly. I think as a matter of due process and fairness that we need to allow Core, Roebling, and Cast to all be here. If this body feels that this process was flawed, we need to have a full discussion. I think we demonstrated in the past and today with item 3Z, 1A, and B, we demonstrated that, notwithstanding the staff's recommendation to continue with Gallagher, we went with Brown, and that was a decision that we did, and we were satisfied with the results. That being said, I'm going to make my substitute motion to defer this entire item until April 5th, and I'm looking for a second.
Is there a second?
I have a second by, I'm sorry, you've got the gavel.
Thank you. We have a second by Commissioner Marino. Is there anyone else who'd like to further discussion? I see a
Yes.
light from Commissioner Sachs.
Before we adjudicate anything, we should have 3 minutes for him.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, now acting as mayor. I think that this is sort of a policy statement that this commission is making, and I welcome it. I think that today is the day that everyone has notice that we're going to discuss this. Staff has done their job. The applicants are, some of them are here, some of them are not. We don't need to continue to defer conversations that should be happening today. It has been noticed and duly noticed per law. We are ready to make a decision. We've had a robust conversation, discussion, and cross-examination, and I think, and I welcome that because this is what we should be doing. So I would, most respectfully, I would really prefer to go with Commissioner Bernard and Kerner's recommendation that we move on the vote today. We are not here to sit to wait for applicants to come when it's convenient to them. This is duly noticed, and most respectfully, Mayor, I would like to take a vote on this today.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to make my comments, and then I'm going to ask that we take public comment before we vote on any motions or put any other motions forward. That's proper procedure. But I will not support delaying this. We have been debating and kicking this back since February of 2021. And we're having an argument about who's best suited to do the renovations at our fire stations. And the ones that we should be focused on are the men and women that are working in those fire stations and improving the conditions in which they have to work. Those men and women are sleeping at these stations, and some of the stations are pretty old and in desperate need of updates. And as Commissioner Bernard so rightfully pointed out, we're trying to make them all in accordance with the latest recommendations out of the University of Miami to prevent cancer. And the longer we delay getting these renovations started, the more at risk we're putting the people that we're charged with protecting in harm's way. And I think we need to refocus our focus and remember that that's who we're supposed to be serving today and vote on these contracts today. I will not be supporting the substitute motion.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. And we have one card. Pardon me? Yeah, one public comment card. That would be from Mr. Dave DeMay. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commission. Dave DeMay, Principal of Cass Construction. I'll go by this quickly. It's kind of like Seinfeld Bizarro World. I appreciate Commissioner McKinley mentioning that this should have been done in 2021. We were actually selected for this project in October of 2020. I've heard cancer from Commissioner Bernard, cancer from Commissioner Kerner. In October 22nd of 2020, we were ranked #1, selected to do this work, using your process, your procedures. We went through a shortlist meeting with your selection committee. We were ranked #1. We went through a final selection committee, which is your terminology. We were ranked #1. We received a congratulations letter from FDO in October 27th of 2020. We signed your contract with no changes, deletions, red lines. We submitted that to the county. Our preliminary pricing began in 2020 for the renovation of these facilities and construction of new facilities. Nothing's happened. We received a notice of cancellation from Administrator Baker December 29th, 2020, that the RFP was canceled for the best interest of the county. I think fire rescue team members work for the county. They've been in facilities since 2020, that when we were selected number one, possible mold, possible asbestos. I don't know, I haven't done a review of it. So this has been going on since 2020. We met all your selection criteria. We met your SBE goals. So my company hasn't done any work since 2020. Our SBE partners haven't done any work. The fire rescue members are still in those facilities. They're cramped, they're overcrowded, they're out of date. Everybody involved in this, it's just insane. The taxpayers that expect to have the best, highest quality facilities in their districts have not had this afforded to them. That's the question I have. We've gone through this twice. We've been selected twice, 2 RFPs, using your process, using your contract, using your selection committee members, people from the county. And twice, I'm standing here because you want to go in a different direction. I don't get it. My team members don't get it. The fire rescue members don't get it. The community doesn't get it. Commissioner Bernard, with all due respect, you said it's a complicated transaction. It's not. This continuing contract has been used for the county for over 10 years. What's so hard about it? I signed it, I submitted it on time with all the attachments to it. You can tell I'm a little passionate about this. This has gone on too far. And we're sitting up here with 3 motions. I don't know how many motions. I don't know what we're going to do today. Who knows? Maybe we'll kick it down the road for another 2 years for these fire rescue guys and women to sit in these facilities. I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMay.
Yes.
Administrator Baker, you'd like to be recognized?
With all due respect, Mr. DeMay, the original contract that went out in 2020 is totally different than this particular contract. And the reason that that specific contract was repealed or pulled back was because there was no time limit on it. It was simply 40 stations plus, which would really exceed our normal 5 years of a contract or adding additional 2 years for extension. It was totally not a project that we would want to put out. I don't get involved in those aspects of RFPs because at the end of the day, I have to make those decisions. It was a decision that we could not move forward with. I could not recommend to this board that we give one company that type of contract with no opportunities for anyone else to participate. And it wasn't because you don't do good work. I know you guys do good work. So that wasn't the case. This particular contract is a little different. It is a 5-year contract with options, I want to say, to renew. Is that correct? Yeah, with options to renew. And so it would be at a maximum 7 years. And whatever gets done in those 7 years gets done. In addition to that, we have not upheld any improvements to our fire stations. We have other annual contracts, and we have moved forward with improving fire stations. So those that are in dire need that we needed to immediately address, we have addressed. So this is going forward with the remaining stations that we need to do improvements on. So my workers, my fire rescue department, the men and women that work in that department, their health comes first and foremost to me. And so we have not upheld any improvements associated with that. We have used other contracts to amend that. So I just wanted to be clear on the difference between what was issued in 2020 and then what is being issued now. At the end of the day, any contract that comes before this board, they have the discretion to make changes. We follow our process. I think our process has, as you stated, have worked out. We follow it. We have appeals. People can appeal. You have every right. And so you've utilized that. That's not an issue with us. I just really want it to be really clear that the 2020 RFP is totally different from this, and that we have not, in any means, upheld improvements on our fire stations that needed to be improved.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment, please?
Certainly, sir.
The RFP was for 10 years. It was stated 10 years, and the one that went out in 2020. The county commission chose one architect, one company, to do all the work, Curry Soward's architect. That contract was approved by this commission. Then, in saying that firms were being left out, 8 firms submitted on that RFP. It was a public RFP, went through the process. It was a 10-year contract. It was stated in the RFP. The RFP also stated that one CM would be chosen. There was a question during a meeting. An attachment came out that stated, once again, there would be one CM chosen. So one architect chosen, one CM chosen. The CM contract, or the CM RFP, was canceled. And it was 10 years in the RFP.
Thank you, Mr. May.
Sure.
All right, Commissioner McKinley?
Yes, thank you. David, thanks for being here today, and I understand that the time and effort from your staff and your team to respond to these RFPs is not something that's free of charge. It is expensive for you to put these proposals together, so I am sorry you've experienced such frustration. I do have a tremendous amount of respect for my professional staff, but one thing that really irritates me or frustrates me is an example. I've got a heavy highway construction firm that was awarded a road construction project, and the county commission has already approved it. And from the time it's taken from us to approve it to the time the staff has actually gotten the contract signed and out the door, that construction firm's costs have increased by $750,000. It's frustrating. Who eats that? Who pays for that increase in that construction cost? So my question to you is, you originally replied to and received an award in October of 2020 that was pulled. They revised the RFP and put it back out on the street. How much are your costs going up? What are these delays costing us?
Exorbitant. It's insane what's going on with the construction cost. If we would have started this back in 2020, there's probably a 40 to 50% savings to the taxpayers on the construction of those facilities.
So we need to do a better job in getting these contracts signed and actually out the door, because it's costing all of us a lot more money than it would have if we had just signed the contract, approved the project, and moved forward on the day that those items came before the board. We cannot afford to punt this down the street anymore.
Thank you, Commissioner. Administrator Baker?
Thank you, Commissioners. We are aware. I am very conscious and constantly pushing the issue of let's get these contracts out because we want to lock in rates. But and you can answer this question or correct me if I'm wrong, were you going to hold prices at the 2020, because you mentioned that is 40, 50%, you were going to hold those prices for 10 years?
So when a project,
or until you completed the projects?
So when
and that's what the RFP stated.
Sure. When a project comes out, we bid the project competitively with the local subcontractors, minority firms, SB firms. We get to a GMP, guaranteed max price, and that's taken to the FDO, and they approve it. So it's a real-time budget when we start construction.
That is normally correct, but in this particular case, this was in the 2020 RFP. That was a very unique situation. I went back through our records, and we've never done that before. And that's not to say I don't believe in doing things in a different manner, because I do. But in that particular case, that was one that I could not recommend with a straight face to our board. So that is the only reason that it was pulled. It wasn't because it was cast. It wasn't because I didn't believe you couldn't do the work, because I do believe you can do the work. I know you can. And your staff has done an excellent job on some of our other projects. So that was an anomaly. It was one I could not recommend to this board, and therefore I did cancel that particular RFP. But we've got the one in front of us now.
All right. Is there any further? Commissioner Marino?
Well, I don't like the idea of delaying this anymore either. I also don't like the idea that if some of our board members don't like the results, they try to change the process. And you can all hate me for my comment. I really don't care. But I think this has been vetted, re-vetted, revisited over and over and over again. I think the process was done the way the staff has been told to do the process, the way they were given the authority to do the process. And I am not in favor of changing what is in front of us today. So my vote would be no if we were trying to make a substitution. I think how staff did their job, how we have given them the authority to do their job, how the magistrate did their job, how CORE did not do their job by having a large enough office space here. I think what is written on the paper today and what we have had the opportunity to read and what we've had the opportunity to discuss with staff previous to this and previous to the last meeting where we punted again, I believe the vote should be that we support staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Weinroth?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm going to withdraw my motion to defer and substitute one more time the original motion to approve Roebling and Cast as as staff has recommended.
I will second that.
So we have a motion to approve for staff's recommendation on item 5D1 for Roebling Architecture and Cast Construction, and by Mayor Weinroth and seconded by Commissioner Marino. So let me just make a note. And Commissioner Bernard, you are recognized.
Just want to ask the county attorney, am I able to do a substitute to the substitute?
Yes, you are.
I think we have this two I withdrew mine.
You can have 3 motions on the table. We have 2 motions on the table right now.
So I would make a substitute to the substitute to select Cast Construction Company and CORE.
So we have a substitute to the substitute to the original motion for Cast and CORE Construction. And that was by Commissioner Bernard and a second by Commissioner Kerner. Are there any other lights on? Commissioner Kerner would like
Thank
to
you.
be
Very
recognized.
briefly, just to, because it's now a substitute motion, I adopt my basis for voting in favor of the substitute, the original motion, and adopt Commissioner Bernard's comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much. Just before we vote on this item, I pulled this item 2 weeks ago, and because I wanted to get more information regarding this item, so in that way, all the parties would have the opportunity to be heard. And I think when I had my review with staff, one of the questions that I did ask staff was whether or not Roebling and Cast Construction were made aware of the meeting that was going to take place today. And, I think staff, if you can respond, Ismail.
Happy to second the same response I provided before. As we coordinate to bring the agenda items forward, those companies, obviously because they signed the contract, they get notified that we are in the process of scheduling the item to be heard by the board. We do not send out specific invitations, right, to the extent saying it is going to be discussed on this day, please come. But they're involved in the process because they do get to know when their item, so to speak, is going to be scheduled, and that staff is working on it.
Okay, and so I wanted to make sure that at our last meeting that everybody was properly notified. And so I believe that this issue is so important that we need to decide this matter today. We have 2 great companies with Cast and CORE, and I believe that we should go with those 2 companies so in that way we can address the fire needs for Palm Beach County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, staff, could you explain to me the difference between Roebling and CORE and why you chose Roebling over CORE?
So it went through the selection process. I want to clarify that it was the selection committee that recommended an award.
And can you explain who's on the selection committee?
Certainly. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to the list because per PPM, there is a county PPM that regulates which staff members sit on each committee is PPM CWO 92. So as it relates to final selection, is comprised of, excuse me, I'll make sure I read you the correct list. It's comprised of the county engineer or representatives for each one that I will detail. County engineer, county administrator, the director of capital improvements division, which is a division within FDO, the director of equal business opportunity, the director of contract development and control, which is under OFMB, the project manager for the project that is being considered, and then a representative from the USIN department, depending on the RFP that we are pursuing. In this case, it was fire rescue, so we had representatives from fire rescue.
And the difference between Core and Roebling?
Going back to the score sheets from the final selection committee, I cannot speak about the specifics from the committee, but I can tell you that based on the summary, there are basically 3 main areas that they consider through the analysis per the RFP: qualifications of the firm, proposed project staff and functions, and comprehensive project management services. Okay, those are the 3 main components that the selection committee evaluates, and those tie to another 3 topics that get calculated beforehand and presented to the selection committee: volume of previous work, location of the firm, and compliance with OEBO. Okay, so the 3, what we call formula points or considerations, are calculated beforehand, presented to the committee adopts those numbers, and then they make determinations on qualifications, proposed staff and functions, and comprehensive project management services. In reviewing the awards, across the board, the evaluation from the committee of those points regarding qualifications, when the 5 points got removed, raised Roebling to the top rank. I cannot speak precisely as to the final selection committee analysis on their differences from one to the other, if you're looking for specific, because I don't see it in the selection committee.
Okay, you can't tell me what the overall points were awarded to each one? Like, what was the point difference? Was it 1 point? Was it 10 points? What was
Yes,
the
I
difference?
can certainly provide you those numbers. Let's see how to make it easier. If you don't mind, Commissioner, let me take a step back. Each committee member assigns points to each group, okay, to each company. Each member then ranks the firms, okay? So if I'm evaluating 3 firms and my total points are 30, 40, 50, first rank, second rank, third rank. Those ordinal rankings then are aggregated, and a final ordinal ranking is provided across the board. So final ordinance ranking, as we had discussed, was revised with Cass, Roebling, and Core in that order. The original was Core, Cass, and Roebling. Okay? Does that answer your question, or do you need specific points?
I would like specific points, please. Just the final one.
Specific points are in ordinal ranking, Commissioner, and that's the challenge. The points are per person. I can read you the ratings per team member, which I think will be too complicated because the points do not get aggregated. The ordinal rankings do. And if I aggregate those ordinal rankings, it ended up being, in the first one, it ended up being 11 points for Core, 13 points for Cass, 16 points for Roebling. Once it was revised, it changed to 9 points for Cass, 12 points for Roebling, and 18 points for Core. But that's ordinal ranking.
Follow up, Mr.
And before is somebody from CORE here that can explain why they think they deserve to be chosen over the two that staff recommended? Mr.
Is there a representative from CORE that can speak to us? Please state your name for the record.
Tara Moses with Core Construction.
I'm sorry?
Tara Moses.
And so I guess, do we need to get a comment card filled out? Okay, thank you. Please, Commissioner McKinley, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, you weren't selected by staff, so I would like to know why you think you should be selected over the two that were selected by staff, and you can raise your mic a little bit.
Sorry, tall. So originally, we were selected first place. After the protest was done, 5 points were removed for our local preference. A gentleman from CAST spoke and said that we don't have an office in Florida. We have 6 offices in Florida. We have 150 employees who operate in Florida alone. We have a joint facility that we operate out of with D. Stevenson giving us the Palm Beach County office, and that is an office space that is utilized for administrative work. We operate on our job sites. We do have a new office that has been in the process of being put into place, and we just obtained that office this year off of PGA Boulevard. We have offices in Broward County, and we surround and do work all over the state. So those 5 points were removed from us because of the language in the sublease saying only one person could occupy that actual office space, when in fact Mr. Dwight Stevenson, who's here, who is the original leaseholder, has done many projects out of that facility with a minimum of 4 people operating at one time in the same office space, with the common use of a conference room that holds up to 20 people. But again, we don't operate in offices. We operate on the job sites. We put job site trailers so we can be there all the time to do the work. If we're sitting in the office, we can't get our jobs built.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you have any further questions? No. Oh, Mayor Weinroth?
Thank you. County Administrator, you represented that the county has continued in its endeavor to make sure that our firefighters are safe, that we're not just waiting on this contract. If whatever direction we take here today, I'm assuming the aggrieved party is not going to go home and just say, aw shucks. Are we going to be able to continue to retrofit and address the problems that were the subject of this RFP, should this contract continue to be held in abeyance by legal process?
I am looking at my awesome, outstanding FDO director, and I'm going to let her answer that question.
And we will continue to provide services as we need to. We have been doing that since this process started. We have other contracts in place, continuing contracts, what we call pre-quals that allow us to do plumbing work, electric work, for example. So we will continue to do that because we need to provide services.
And so my remark to my colleagues is, don't vote for this just because you're afraid of the consequence and not being able to protect our firefighters. If you are so inclined to vote for the motions on the table because you feel that that's the fairest way of going, that's fine, but I think it would be a mistake to just go and vote this today just because we're trying to make sure that we're being prudent as far as the health of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right.
Mr. Vice Mayor, can I make a point just before the vote?
Of course.
If there's going to be a vote.
You're recognized.
So from a legal standpoint, the board does have wide discretion in awarding these contracts. I do want to point out, and it's language in our purchasing ordinance, and it's also essentially pretty much black letter law in relation to this, that you do have the right to award to the firm or firms that you deem to be most advantageous to the county, but you do need to take in consideration the evaluation criteria set forth in the RFP. There's been some discussion that's, I think, does take into account the evaluation criteria. But the three main areas are the qualifications of the firm, the proposed project staff and functions, and comprehensive project management services. Those would be the areas that are not basically sort of just staff-provided numbers if they check a box. So I just, from a legal standpoint, if you're going to reject the determination of the selection committee here, I do just want to make sure we have something on the record that supports that.
We are taking the selections committee recommendation. So
The original, correct.
The original selections committee recommendation. So we're not going against the selections committee. We're just rejecting the special master. But this is the
Rejecting the-
selections committee's recommendation that we're going with.
Okay, so formally, the board is rejecting the determination of the director of purchasing and the special master recommendation if you move forward with the award to Core and Cast.
Commissioner Kerner?
And then prior to our voting here, I'm also taking into consideration the comments made by Core as they appeared before the board today in terms of the importance and weight of having a large facility where an office, so to speak, versus their ability to execute on the contract on site with resources that they've discussed here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone, I'm looking at our county attorney has a comment.
Yeah, just for point of clarification and for consideration by the board, there's a few points I wanted to make. Number one, I've heard discussion about RFP and I've heard discussion about bids. This is an RFP, and the inherent difference in an RFP is discretion. There's a lot more discretion in an RFP than there is in a sealed bid. When you give a sealed bid, the lowest bidder wins. It's assuming they meet the minimum criteria. In an RFP, you have a lot more discretion. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the process is worked perfectly in this case. The fact that the board may decide differently than what has been decided up to this point doesn't change the process. The end of this process is the board. The end of the process is the board's opportunity to evaluate for itself and exercise its discretion. So the process did work the way it was supposed to.
Thank you. All right, hearing, I don't see any other lights, no other comments from the board. So what we have on the table right now is a substitute of the original motion, which is to award this to CAST and CORE, and it was motioned by Commissioner Bernard, seconded by Commissioner Kerner, and we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sachs? Bernard?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerner?
Yes.
Mayor Weinroth?
No.
Commissioner Wise? Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Commissioner Marino?
No.
And Commissioner McKinley?
No.
So the motion passes 4-3, and this item is finalized.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Sure you enjoyed that, chairing that? Okay, we're going to go on to a non-controversial item here now. We have had some giants in our county. We've had, coming out of District 5, Commissioner Aronson, Murray Kalish, Judge Winnikoff, and we had another giant who just passed recently, a gentleman by the name of Jay DiPietro. Jay was a man who really was a giant. For 30 years, he ran Boca West, which could be a city in and to itself. And in his passing, I know Commissioner Sachs has asked to see that he is remembered forever with a street named after him in John Prince Park. So Commissioner Sacks, would you like to make a motion to approve the recommendation for this naming of the street in John Prince Park?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I think many of us here know who J.D. Petro was. And with this, I have the actual sign, thanks to Eric from our parks. Hey, Eric, come on up.
He's here.
Would you come on up, because I want to do this in a formal way. As, may I approach the podium, Mr. Mayor? I'll do this
Of
quick.
course,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, can you hear me? This sign, I wanted to have this sign presented to J.D. Petro when he was alive. And unfortunately, God called him home before we were able to present this to him personally. But he was laid to rest yesterday. We almost made it. But in his memory, and for all the people he has helped, we want his name to remain in perpetuity in a special road. It is interesting that as manager of all the club managers in America, with right here in the Florida region, he was able to raise millions of dollars so that those who have broken hearts, who have broken lives, he was able to help. And especially to children with disabilities, with the money, the millions of dollars that he raised, he built the Therapeutic Recreation Center at John Prince Park. And he also built something which I just think is extraordinary, and that is called a Boundless Park. It's a playground for children with special disabilities. I have a little girl who is mine, and she always had a difficult time playing in a playground. Well, this playground is for all those children and young adults who have disabilities, so it's boundless. There's no limits, and they can laugh and play as any other child would. So this is a special meeting. So this J.D. Petro Way will mark the route from Lake Worth Road to the Boundless Playground. And it just seems so fitting. The family was all here at Boca West and at his funeral yesterday. So I wanted to make this special presentation here. I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to do this. So J.D. Petro Way will stand there at that route. Thanks to Eric Call, has done so much to help us with this. We almost made it, Eric. Almost made it, but I know that wherever Jay is, I'm sure he's up there running some country club in heaven and watching down and knowing that this will be in his legacy forever. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, County Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. And Commissioner Kerner, since this is in District 3, I'm sure you'd like to second.
That was Commissioner Sacks, by the way.
We all know who she is. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Commissioner Sacks for that very heartfelt and passionate motion to name a roadway within John Prince Park to J.D. Petro Way. It is very meaningful for me to be able to second this motion in that John Prince Park is not just in the district that I represent, but it is my childhood park, and it is in fact my adulthood park. I'm in there at least once a week. And although I had a different experience in the parks there, I'm cognizant of how important and impactful the youthful experiences in John Prince Park and in the various actual playgrounds and facilities that have grown over time in an incredible fashion, by the way. Thank you to our Parks Director for his leadership. So it's very meaningful for me to be here today to second your very important motion and to see this come to fruition. Thank you, Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. Commissioner Marino, you are recognized.
Thank you. I actually have had the opportunity to participate in several of the Club Managers Association events, and many of them had been hosted at Boca West. And Jay and his staff did an amazing job. And as Maria said, the monies raised through these events help so many local kids. And we have to be cognizant of who we can and can't help. And with efforts like those of Mr. DiPietro and the Club Managers Association, they have really helped a lot of kids and families and services in the area. So it's with great pride that I will vote on this motion. Thank you.
Very good, and we certainly embrace his widow, Sharon, with our love, and certainly will miss Jay. With that, we're going to vote on this motion. All in favor, all opposed. Show this as a unanimously approved motion. Thank you very much. Okay, it's nice to have non-controversial items. See how it works, Vice Mayor? Okay, we're going to move on to now item 5F1. I remind you there's a revised summary on this item, and we'll wait until Commissioner Sachs has gotten her picture taken with that beautiful sign so that we can all have our attention on our business. All right, so just to remind you, on October 21st, 2021, the Engineering Department sent notice of proposed fee changes to the Palm Beach chapter of the Florida Engineers Society and the Gold Coast Builders Association. A meeting with both was held and addressed their comments. No feedback was received. There is a motion, or I'm looking for a motion to amend the application fee schedule, reviewing the traffic impact studies for compliance with Article 12. Do I have a motion?
I just have a quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Commissioner Kerner, we've heard a lot from you today.
I am fired up today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When was the last time there was an application increase in the fee?
There hasn't been an increase since the initiation of these fees. 2008
Okay, so it's
was
been,
when the board gave approval for these fees. So since then, there's been no increase for these fees at all.
well over a decade, I understand then. So I will move for approval, agenda item 5F1, revised summary.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner, and the Vice Mayor has taken the opportunity to second that motion. All in favor, all opposed, show that is approved, 7-0. Thank you, sir. We now move on to item 5G1, Planning and Zoning and Building. Do we need a presentation, or do we have a motion?
Motion to approve 5G1, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner on 5G1. I have a second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed. You don't need to come up. You are approved, 7-0. Community Services, 5H1. Do we have any need for a presentation, Commissioner McKinley?
Yes, thank you. On item 5H1, I need to disclose a voting conflict on this item, the approval of a contract with the Florida Association of Recovery Residences Incorporated for the provision of providing education, training, and engaging FAR certified recovery residences regarding the Recovery Capital Index in an amount not to exceed $60,000. I was recently appointed to the Board of Directors for FAR. That approval having happened about a week ago. And while this position is unpaid, I've been told by the County Attorney's Office that it would be a conflict for me to vote on this agenda item. In order to comply with the Code of Ethics, I will abstain and not participate in any discussion regarding this matter.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley, and of course, you will file the necessary documentation with the clerk. Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Commissioner McKinley for the disclosure, but more importantly, for her service on the Board of the Florida Association of Recovery Residents. And with that, I move 5H1 for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. I have a second by the Vice Mayor. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed, show that is approved by 6-0 with a recusal by Commissioner McKinley. Thank you, everybody. All right, we have an add-on. This is 5J1. Actually, this was moved out of consent. This is a updated management plan, and I'm assuming since it was moved off consent that there is some need for a presentation, if not. Wait a minute, where am I? Oh, someone messed up my agenda. 5I1, okay.
Let me just make a motion to approve item 5I1. This is the settlement agreement and the interlocal agreement regarding the opioid litigation.
Thank you. To our county attorney, do we have to go through chapter and verse on what we're approving here, since this is an item we dealt with in
No.
Shade? Okay.
No, it's on the agenda, it's been advertised properly, we're fine.
Okay, very good. So I have a motion by Commissioner McKinley on 5I1.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, my chief of litigation is telling me that he wants to speak.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. I think because what was discussed in a shade meeting as to the specifics of the settlement, I think it'd be prudent that the outside counsel at least advertises it to the public what the terms of the settlements are.
That is fine. Why don't you come on up and make your brief presentation?
Good morning, Shayna Sachs from Napoli Shkolnik. I'm here with my partner, Hunter Shkolnik. So we're here to talk today and remind everyone about the Endo settlement, which is what we spoke about in Shade, as Mr. Otley said. This is a settlement that's being offered by Endo Health Solutions and Endo Pharmaceutical Incorporated. It's a lump sum payment to the state of Florida at $65 million to be paid in the second quarter of 2022. We hope that the money comes when the other settlements that we've discussed with you arrives at the same time.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, just a point here. The transcripts of the Shade settlements aren't released to the public until after the case has been settled, so I think we're a little premature on presenting too much of this at this moment, other than what's in the agenda item.
County attorney, help us through this. We've had this discussion offline, so.
I had thought that the discussion would be later, but I will defer to my chief assistant litigation attorney because the case is not settled.
The basis of why you're doing a settlement and the nuances that were discussed in the Shade meeting is not being discussed now. But in terms of the settlement, which is public, is something that should be discussed here today. Just what we'll get from the settlement, because it is public, it will be public. The settlement there would be a motion to the court against the defendant that we're dropping a case against the defendant, so that will be public.
I understand. So we're drawing a distinction between conversations that happened in the Shade meeting versus the actual public settlement terms that are going to be made public anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is such an important issue to me, and I just want to make sure that we're being very careful, so thank you for allowing me to
Understood, Commissioner McKinley. And I certainly had that same concern, and that's why I raised it with our county attorney. And just for the record, this information from the Shade meeting will be released at a point in time when the entire case has been resolved.
Correct. The entire litigation. The case, not just any particular defendant, but the entire lawsuit.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable with what is now on the record, or do you feel that we need additional information on the record?
I think you told him the amount. You can say it to the county.
Okay. So it was, just to add one thing, so it was $65 million to the entire state of Florida. In terms of Palm Beach County, we would expect approximately $490,000 as a direct pay, and approximately $1.89 million paid through the regional payment, which is related to the interlocal agreement, which is part of what we're here to discuss.
Okay. Commissioner Kerner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, where did you guys come from today to be here?
I came from New York.
I came from Puerto Rico. These attorneys are top in their field, and they're prosecuting some of the most important litigation in terms of local governments. Is there any way we could accommodate them appearing by Zoom in the future for updates or disclosures like this? It's quite a...
Absolutely, no problem.
I mean, thank
It's
goodness
at the
they're on
board's desire.
Thank good they're not on hourly fee versus contingency, but be
That's
that as it
correct.
may, their
Although
time
being
is...
in New York and being in Palm Beach.
I was going to say,
I'm very happy to come.
I am happy to come here anytime you'd like me here.
Well, then
It's
I-
30 degrees at home, so.
My hope is at their discretion, they can appear by Zoom. Thank you for your service and for being
Thank
here
you,
today
Commissioner.
personally.
We would like to thank the commission for entrusting this very important litigation, and we're going to continue to fight on behalf of the county. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, so I have a motion by Commissioner McKinley. I have a second by the Commissioner Kerner. Do I have any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of 5I1, all opposed, show that it's unanimously approved. Thank you so much for your representation, and we'll see you either on the TV or in person in the future.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
All right, yes, you have that look on your face like you're not ready
We
to
have
get
one
up.
more item.
No, the other question, because there are two items. The second item is the interlocal agreement, which was required. Yeah, there's an A and a B.
Sorry, I don't have it here.
The motion I understood to encompass A and B.
Yes,
But to
I
clarify the record,
My
the
motion
motion-
encompassed item 5I1, A,
Yeah,
and B.
it is in there. I'm sorry that I didn't read it correctly. It's not spaced the way that we usually lay these things out. So just to clarify, 5I1, A and B, the motion was made by Commissioner McKinley, seconded by Commissioner Kerner. I'm going to call for the vote again. All in favor, all opposed. It is approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our lawyers are now ready to get up. All right, so now the item that I prematurely called 5J1, which originally was on consent. This is an updated management plan for the Jupiter Ridge Natural Area. And I'm assuming, since it was pulled, that there is some need to give us a little bit of an update on this. Mr. Rudder, you have center stage.
Mayor, good. Still morning. A few more minutes worth. Yes, just this item was moved to regular in so far as the management plan had not been updated in over 10 years. No members of this board had the opportunity to see the previous version. Allison Spall from is here to do a brief presentation just to give you an update. But these are customary items that are done in our many of our natural areas. Goes through a process to update programming and plans for the next 10 years. And I will hand it over to Allison.
Hi, thank you. My name's Allison Spall, as Patrick said, and I'm with And this will be short and sweet. We're required by the state every 10 years to do updates on the natural areas on state-owned properties. So the 269-acre, that's me, 269-acre Jupiter Ridge Natural Area is located in the northeast portion of Palm Beach County within the town of Jupiter. You can see it, the red parcel up there. The county owns approximately 3 acres of land within this natural area. The areas in orange are county-owned, and the blue is the state-owned property. We lease about 266 acres from the state pursuant to a lease agreement. And again, that requires a 10-year update according to the state statutes. The original plan was approved by the board in 1996, and the first 10-year update we did in 2010. So this is our second update to the management plan. And there's only some minor changes that occurred since the last update. We had some vegetation changes. As we do restoration on the property, the vegetation communities change, they get better, they go from disturbed to more intact, pristine habitat, which is what our goal is. So we had some updated vegetation community types as the vegetation changed. Our management units that we use to do prescribed burns on the site, we expanded one of the units to include all of a no-burn zone that was in another unit. We did 2 restoration projects, one in 2012 and one in 2017. Our public use facilities, we had an addition of a hiking trail off of our northern hiking trail loop, and that links to the Riverwalk multi-use trail. And we also removed the parking lot that was the restroom that was in the parking lot due to occurrences of vandalism. And that is the gist of our 10-year update to this plan.
All right, well, this is something that should be near and dear to Commissioner Marino since it's in District 1. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion and a comment. First off, thank you, staff. Secondly, if you haven't been to the north end of the county, which I don't know if you have or not, we have some phenomenal natural areas in the north end of the county and a phenomenal coastline that we've spent a lot of time making sure it's preserved. And so I thank staff for doing this and maintaining and improving our natural areas. Thank you. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. Vice Mayor made a second. All in favor, all opposed. Show that as approved, 7-0. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
presentation. Okay. It's now time for Commissioners' district appointments. I'm going to go from left to right, my left, and that means Commissioner Sachs, you're up. Nada. Commissioner Bernard.
None, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to appoint Officer Troy Marchese to the Personnel Appeals Board.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed. That has been approved, 7-0.
And that's no more appointments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McKinley.
All these M's down here. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Regina Boland to the Water Utilities Advisory Board and Tracy Dickinson to the Personnel Appeals Board.
I have a second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed. Show that approved, 7-0. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Commissioner Marino.
None at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
None.
Thank you. And the mayor has none. All right, looked like it was going to be a short agenda, but I was wrong. Administration comments. Oh, come on, you must have something you want to talk about. You've done enough damage for one day. Okay, County Attorney.
I've done enough damage too.
All right, then we're back to the commissioner's comments. Commissioner Marino, what do you got?
I'd just like to say that Commissioner McKinley and I had a wonderful time. Habitat for Humanity Women Build out in the Glades, and they chose the hardest job for our group of 13 women, where we laid sod for 2 houses and dug holes, and we showed up and said, we can't paint or something easy? No, they had the 13 women putting sod down, but we actually did our job, our task. We finished in 2 hours, and they had given us 3 hours to do it. So it just goes to show you what a group of strong women can do, and it was fun to be doing it with our ladies from around the county, and also attended the PBA ball this weekend, and we had a lot of award-winning police officers in our county, and I just want to give a shout out to all of them because they do go above and beyond, and they do deserve our respect and our gratitude. So thank you to all of our policemen and women and their staff in the field. Thank you.
And we thank you certainly for your service on behalf of the community. And we know we have 3 very strong representatives of the community up here with us. Commissioner Kerner, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No formal comments except to advise the board that I will be departing later today to serve on the not the value adjustment board. God forbid.
You missed that meeting.
Canvassing board. Today is election day for the runoffs. I saw Assistant County Administrator Rudder voted. Very exciting. We have some big municipal offices to be filled today, so I just wanted to say thank you to those that ran as candidates, and even if they didn't prevail, we know up here how hard it is to be a candidate for public office, and to wish those that are in the runoff today best of luck.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. And just for those of you who are out there who are watching and thinking, do I need to go to the polls? If you live in the city of Boynton Beach, Lake Worth Beach, town of Lantana, town of Jupiter, Jupiter Inlet Colony, or Riviera Beach, find your way to the polls today. Some of your neighbors would like to be in public office, and they certainly deserve your consideration. That being said, we'll move on now to Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you so much. I had the honor of passing the torch for the National Organization of Women Feminists of the Year to Carrie Hogwatt, who is our public defender, and especially noteworthy because I've practiced criminal defense for many, many years, and I've seen her ability to stand in a courtroom and defend the indigent regardless of the facts of the case or the difficulty of the case. She has really been one of our best women here in Palm Beach County, and I was very happy to join finally in person all of the other feminists in this wonderful presentation at Lawton Childs Park. So it was a fun weekend too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacks. Commissioner McKinley, I see you have a request for us.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First, in response to a couple of my colleagues' comments, it was an honor to join Commissioner Sacks on those presentations and recognize Ann Fonfa as the other now awardee for all of her work on holistic alternatives to healthcare and all of her just being a phenomenal healthcare advocate. She runs the Annie Appleseed Project, and quite apropos, actually, to give that award to her. I hope that we will all keep Michelle Damone in our prayers as she is battling stage 4 cancer and a recent diagnosis, and I'm helping her right now because she's fighting her insurance company that has denied the chemotherapy treatment that her doctor ordered because she had an anaphylactic shock response to the first chemo. And unfortunate that here is somebody who has served her community so well and been an advocate for others who's now fighting for her own life. But to recognize Ann Fonfa and the work that she does for cancer patients and being able to provide them with healthy diet recommendations and those types of things was pretty phenomenal the other day. And Commissioner Marino and I were covered from head to toe in muck. And so, you know, I've had the muck between my toes for a while, and I'm glad my colleague now shares that with me. Today is March 22nd, and it is National Agriculture Day. So I'd like to thank all of our farmers and all of our farm workers in the industries that support our agricultural community, particularly being in one of the largest agricultural communities in the United States. Before I see that Michelle Anaya DeParter is in the audience, I should say I think Commissioner Marino and I have a newfound respect for the hard work of the men and women who work in construction as well. I don't think I was healed from soreness for at least until maybe yesterday. I worked muscles I didn't know that I had. I have one request for an off-site proclamation declaring March 25th through the 31st of this year as National Farm Worker Awareness Week in Palm Beach County.
I have a second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed? It's unanimously approved.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to direct staff to prepare a resolution endorsing the designation of State Road 715, renamed to the Deputy Sheriff Donta Manuel and Deputy Sheriff Jonathan Wallace Highway. This legislation was approved. It was Senate Bill 160. It goes to the governor for signature. Upon the governor's signature, the county has to ratify that by resolution. So I want us to be prepared to hit the ground running as soon as he signs that bill. These were two deputies that were killed in the line of duty, and this will honor their memory and their public service out in Pahokee. Thank you.
Okay, so I see a motion by Commissioner McKinley to support Senate Bill 160. It's seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed. We will show that as approved 7-0.
Yeah, just for clarification, we did support the bill. This is the resolution that we must pass in order to enact those signs to go up.
Absolutely, and
Thank you.
let the record be noted. Okay, Commissioner Bernard, how are you over there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple comments. On March 4th, I did attend the Women Build event in Boynton Beach, but they kicked me out, so. But the women who worked on the construction during that week on the 4th and the 5th, raising money, and just kudos to Habitat for Humanity for the work that they're doing in terms of helping our families. As already mentioned, the municipal elections are today, and so the mayor already named the city, so if you live in those cities or towns, please go out and vote. The next thing is, hold on, let me make sure. One second. I would like to extend my condolences to my constituent, Malachi Knowles, and his family. His brother passed, and so Malachi Knowles is the founder of Inner City Youth Golfers Associations, where he mentors and teaches our youth and their parents golf. And finally, last night, Commissioner Vice Mayor Weiss and I, we were at a Path to College event, Shine and Dine, and we had the chance to sit down with some of the young kids who are at different high schools, and just to get the chance to just speak to them, to talk about like their career, how they want, where they want to go. Just kudos to Kristen Sylvain, her whole team, and Path to College, because I had such a wonderful time speaking to the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Vice Weiss, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of District 4, I would like to request an off-site proclamation for Drowning Prevention Month.
I have a motion by the Vice, and I have a second by Commissioner Marino. All in favor, all opposed, it's approved 7-0.
Thank you. And then I'm requesting an off-site proclamation declaring April as Guardian Ad Litem Volunteer Appreciation Month. And just to clarify, this proclamation appeared on your agendas as Child Abuse Prevention and Volunteer Appreciation Month, but has been renamed.
Okay, I have again a motion by Vice Mayor Weiss, seconded by Commissioner Marino. All in favor, all opposed, 7-0. You have your approval.
Thank you, sir. Couple of comments. Last Friday, had the opportunity to travel down to Miami with a group from the TPA, and we were hosted by the Miami-Dade MPO, and we had some commissioners from Miami-Dade that joined us to talk about what they were doing down there as it relates to transit, mobility, and helping people move around their community, and the opportunity to see some of their successes, but also they were able to share some of the challenges that they had seen over the years to help, hopefully we don't make some of the same mistakes. But I really want to thank them and for their, not only their hospitality, which was wonderful, but also I think there was a true openness in wanting to share information with us, and hopefully the ability, in fact, I know we'll have the ability to collaborate with them going forward and making Palm Beach County a better and hopefully an easier place for us all to move around. And then this past Saturday, also got to attend an event hosted by Vita Nova. And if you're not familiar with Vita Nova is an organization that provides housing to children aging out of foster care. These are kids that, through no fault of their own, have endured, in some cases, very, very difficult circumstances in their lives. And the fact that we have a wonderful organization like Vita Nova and a community that supports their efforts to try and help these children or young adults now to make that bridge into adulthood. And I want to, it's just a wonderful organization. And then also lastly, with Path to College that we attended dinner last night, it was an opportunity for the students. These are children that come from economically disadvantaged homes to attend a dinner. It was set up in the way of almost like a business dinner. So they were given instructions on, general etiquette, on how to, attend a sort of a semi-formal dinner. The kids did great. I wish I had such impeccable manners most of the time, but they did very well. But the bottom line for these children is Path to College helps the kids get into their top-rated schools, and that's what this organization is all about, is helping kids whose families may not have the resources or the wherewithal to help them achieve their best possible lives. So it's wonderful to have an organization like them also in Palm Beach County. So thank you, and it was really a great opportunity to spend time with some just great ambassadors, if you will, of Palm Beach County, because I know they're going to go on and make a big difference not only here, but potentially the country and hopefully the rest of the world.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All right, I have a sort of a eclectic set of items I wanted to hit. Let me start with the letter that you should have on your desk today. Someday we're going to go to a museum and there's going to be an exhibit talking about home rule and what it used to be. And our legislature, on a continuing basis, seems to think that they know better than the locally elected leaders on how to run the municipalities and counties. Senate Bill 620 is another in the continuing saga of attacking home rule. And Senate Bill 620 states that an ordinance or even a voter-initiated charter amendment that has or will cause a reduction of business profits would be subject to civil action. I can't even imagine the kind of litigation this is going to cause. I'm sure our county attorney is going to need a couple of dozen more attorneys to help her address this, as each and every item that comes before this body could probably be attacked for having some impact on business profits. I'm going to ask this body to approve my signing this letter to Governor DeSantis, asking him to veto Senate Bill 620. Commissioner McKinley, I recognize you.
Thank you, Mayor, and I certainly support sending this letter to the governor. I participated in some of those committee hearings during session on behalf of the Florida Association of Counties. I just want to make sure that, we knew, FAC knew that we were going to end up on the losing end of this despite all of our efforts. The language was tightened a little bit, so I just want to make sure that this letter pertains to the enrolled language and not the bill as originally filed.
Since this letter was drafted by our good friend Todd Von Laren, I am sure it is on point with what passed. Mr. Von Laren, would you like to come on up and offer some clarification? And then Vice Weiss is going to have a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Commissioner. And yes, we do understand that there were some tweaks that were made through that bill throughout the process, specifically to some of the financial implications of it as well. But the reality is that early on, the analysis of this bill that was done by Florida Tax Watch had a pretty significant dollar amount that they put on it. They stand behind that. We referenced that in this bill just to give it some reference overall. I could go back and maybe just tweak that language slightly, just overall reference to that specifically. But I worked with Mr. Chase on this particular bill. We'll go back and we will just double check it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that it's specific to the enrolled bill and we're not misrepresenting anything.
Yeah, particularly that last paragraph on the first page, and then the public health measures, because public health crises and emergency declarations were specifically exempted.
Yep.
So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so if, Yes.
Mayor?
Well, let me get to Vice Weiss and then Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support sending this letter on to the governor. I guess one of the questions I had, it came to me today while we were going through our agenda, is at times we will repeal an ordinance which could have a financial impact to people. Would that be subject to also?
I don't know, do we need an opinion from our county attorney?
I have not actually considered whether a repeal could be a cause of business damage, but I will tell you that the legislation is extremely broad and unforgiving, so I would not be surprised, but I would need to look at that a little closer.
So if we were to say if there was a fee that had been implemented that's being collected by an outside company on behalf of the county, and we repealed that, so they lost that business, that they could potentially sue us for the damage we did to them?
I don't think that is what was intended. Whether that happens or not, there's often a lot of unintended consequences. I would really need to look at that part. I know it covers if we pass a charter amendment, an ordinance, if we increase fees that go to fund our own programs, if we limit hours of operation because there's a public nuisance or problem. There's ways then we can try to work around that, but ultimately it would have a very significant negative impact on us.
Interesting. If we were something, if we were to like raise parking fees or something?
Absolutely.
So we'd be subject to that?
Yes, absolutely.
And when does this law go into effect?
When signed. The governor has a certain number of days to approve it or to reject it. And I don't really remember if it's 15 days or some such amount of time. But right now, I think it has been sent to him, and Todd would probably be able to tell us that.
Okay, thank you.
But the business has to have been located in our county for 3 years, and it doesn't apply to any ordinances that are on the books prior to the enacting.
Correct.
But it does apply to any amendments.
Correct.
Commissioner Sacks.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Todd, before you sat down, I wanted to ask you, did you say Dominic Calabro was for or against this bill?
Yeah, so TaxWatch did an analysis of this bill that hung a fairly significant financial impact on it. And so through that analysis, they expressed some extreme concerns with the legislation, and particularly some of the broad nature of the legislation and what that impact might be to local governments, both on the financial side for damages that might be incurred, as well as for legal fees that might be incurred by that. I mean, the number in their analysis was about $900 million a year that they put on there, and that caught a number of legislators' attention, and I think that the governor's office as well is taking a look at that, very closely too.
Well, he's very astute and well respected. So TaxWatch was against the signing of this bill. Okay, and secondly, every one of our legislative delegation vote against this bill?
No, not everyone in our delegation did, and I can provide you with a vote sheet on the final votes for that if you'd like to see that.
Okay.
I don't have it handy, but I can get that to you.
I just want to be sure that we're consistent with what the county wants and what our legislative delegation put forward on this. And
Commissioner and Mayor, I can tell you, this is an issue that from the onset of the legislative session, it has been very consistent with our priorities of our board as well as with the Florida Association of Counties. We opposed this legislation. We worked with FAC vigorously in opposition to it. We still remain in opposition to it. I think that was communicated pretty clearly to the entire legislature about where we fell on that. But it did ultimately pass the legislature. One of the things that we do know, and having worked with Governor DeSantis, and particularly during his first term, he vetoed a piece of legislation that was an anti-home rule bill that preempted local governments on, our ability to regulate certain products locally. So we hope that the governor will receive this with the same light and use the same rationale that he did in that earlier legislation he vetoed in applying it to Senate Bill 620.
So we are consistent with the Florida Association of Counties as well as Tax Watch, and I'm sure a number of other large lobbying groups. And I think it's a good thing. I'm certainly in support of it. And maybe you could let us know later who might have voted with this. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinley, you had a follow-up?
Sure. Senator Harrell voted in favor of it, and Representatives Caruso, Roth, and Snyder all voted in favor of it, and the rest of our delegation voted against it. Senator Harrell, Representative Caruso, Representative Roth, and Representative Snyder voted yes, and the rest of our delegation opposed it, so it was on party lines.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to, without objection, ask that Mr. Bonlaren tweak the letter and that I will then sign it and we'll get that off to the governor and hopefully he will give it due consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, under my comments today, I'd sent you a quick note that in response to the Park and Recreation Department recent implementation of a senior and veteran discount at county pools, I'd like to request that they explore senior and veteran discounts for recreational programs and services with departments such as Parks and Recreation, Library, and ERM. If you have no objection to that, I'll ask that the staff take a look at that. Commissioner Sachs?
Thank you. And this is part of my Senate legacy, is that we've passed a law that all veterans in the state of Florida will have free access to state parks. Now, we can use that as an impetus for county parks as well. And I would also like, if we could pull in Ann Gannon's office, Division of Department of Motor Vehicles, or Division of Driver's Licenses, because any state veteran can have a V put on their driver's license, which will designate them as a veteran, and that way that will give them free access into county parks as well as state parks.
Okay.
So if we could do that as well. Thank you for
Thank
thinking
you.
of this, Mayor.
And I'll take that as no objection to that direction to staff. All right, since you brought up driver's licenses, it's appropriate that I mention that thousands of Floridians are driving with suspended licenses due to unpaid traffic tickets, fines, or other court obligations. Starting on March 28th, Palm Beach County residents have the opportunity to reinstate their driver's licenses through Operation Green Light. This is a virtual event that's being handled by our clerk of the court, Senator Abruzzo. It's tough to drop those titles after you're so used to them for so long. So anybody who has a problem with their driver's license, please reach out to our clerk's department. This starts on the 28th and it runs through April 1st. Operation Greenlight is a way to get your driver's license back, which is a good thing. And finally, in my comments, we have the Marine. I see Senator Sachs, Commissioner Sachs. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say? I see your light is still on. I know, you just want the attention that garners. Marine Industries Association is holding the Palm Beach International Boat Show, which is from the 24th to March 27th. Come on down and see some yachts. Maybe you'll want to buy one or go out on a fishing trip. I know Commissioner or Vice Mayor Weiss loves his yachts and with his cats on board. All right, I think I'm done. Let's call it a day. This meeting is now adjourned.